one of the things that always impresses me when I look at teams that are contending for national championships is how many of the names that I know from the previous year. And it
Right.
feels like Ohio State has at least one guy at every position that I know by name. And that should scare many of the folks that have to play against them. But that said, like of the known commodities, right?
Hmm.
We're talking about Justin Fields, Chris Olave. I know about a lot about Trey Sermon. I think he's going to be helpful. Which one of those guys outside of the quarterback do you think is most integral to their success of the known commodities?
Well, that's a great question. I mean, I think Olave is going to be the one who really emerges as the national household name. I think people should know him, and maybe if they only followed the playoff, then the memory is going to be him slipping and falling and cutting off his route and the interception that ended, the late bit at the win. But that'd be missing the way he arrived as a freshman with the big time plays in the rivalry win over Michigan. Continuing that on in the Big Ten championship game, and then really last year, I think he wound up with 12 touchdowns, during the season. He can build on that. I mean, this guy can run every route. He's one of the fastest players in the country. I remember it was a cool story when he was being recruited. Ryan Day basically stumbled onto him in San Diego. He was there recruiting a quarterback, and they're like, well, you should probably check out our receiver. He's pretty good. Like, okay, well, who is this guy? He wasn't really on their board. He was like the baseball team would have him out just to pinch run because he was so fast and go steal some bases, and that was all he did, just to, an opportunity to use his speed. That's the kind of, top end athleticism we're talking about. But it's not. He can't do it alone, I don't think, because Ohio State still wants to rotate receivers. And if you just have one in college football, I think you've got some chances of taking that away, especially when you get to the playoff level. So Olave, I think, emerges as a real national name, but Garrett Wilson's going to be pushing for that as well. I know that'll be the next guy in line. That 5-star really lived up to that potential, had a couple big catches late in the year and a highlight reel grab against Clemson. This kid is really special out of Texas, and the two of those, I think that can form one of the best tandems in the country. They might need that more because Ohio State and Brian Hartline, the position coach, have tended to play 6 or 7 receivers. Well, 4 of these guys that are probably going to be in it are true freshmen. And granted, they're all top 15 recruits in the country, all 4 and 5 stars. But, there's only so much you want to expect from 4 freshmen. So that might mean more catches for Wilson and Olave than the Ohio State offense has usually allowed. So I think those guys are going to be key because that Fields is going to make plays on his own, but he's got to have somebody on the other end to catch the football.
Man, I am bullish on that receiving core. Like I really love watching Julian Fleming play in high school, and
right.
Garrett Wilson came onto my radar in his spurning of Texas, talking about I want to go somewhere where they're going to develop me, and I was like, okay, gotta circle this kid right here. And then last year, returning punts, having to put on a different jersey because they really wanted him out there.
Right.
I just I'm so happy for him, and I'm happy for many of the kids that have an opportunity there. One of the things that I think is interesting, though, is once you get past Trey Sermon, are you really looking at Marcus Crowley coming back from injury as the spellback, or am I missing somebody there?
Well, they need Master Teague back too. I mean, both of those guys are coming off injury, and Teague ran for almost 800 yards in that backup role behind J.K. Dobbins, and now in hindsight, when you look at what Ohio State's trying to replace at running back, imagine if J.K. Dobbins had played a few more second halves of games and not given Teague all of those 800 yards, what that might have looked like for the record books and for his Heisman campaign. But that also tells you just how prolific J.K. Dobbins really was, and why Trey Sermon was important, and why that Achilles tear for Master Teague on the first day of spring camp, really made that more important to land Trey Sermon, but also why his rehab is going to be so closely watched, heading in this month and then August to see, because that is such. Ohio State has had guys with Achilles tears in spring the last 2 years. They're both linebackers, Justin Hilliard and Tuff Borland, and both came back during the year. But Borland, in particular, because he was a starter, you could tell that he wasn't the same the whole year. That Achilles is a big deal. Not all of those injuries are the same, but if we're talking about a running back to, move and cut with the speed that he needs to, that's going to be difficult. And it seems as if Teague is ahead of schedule, but what does that actually mean when it comes to playing out there? I like Crowley a lot. I think that he would. In my mind, I'm assuming that Teague is going to need time to get back to full health before they could really count on him in the backfield. Crowley, he was on schedule with his knee. He hurt in November against Maryland. He was going to be, full participant by this summer. So, they're behind closed doors, but I assume that all indications are that he's going to be ready for training camp. He was kind of I think, under-recruited. I know that Tony Alford, the position coach, thought he got a steal there. He was the Florida Gatorade Player of the Year. That's some stiff competition down there in that state.
Man.
So he was coming on, and I think that again, I keep going back to this Clemson game a lot, and I get that that's probably a sore suspect or sore spot for a lot of Ohio State fans. But
I'm an OU fan. Like, come on now. Like, we can commiserate. It's okay.
Yeah. So, but there were so many things about that game that inform where this team is going, and that I mentioned that with Olave, but I think Teague was healthy in that game, but he wasn't effective. He wasn't ready to be that guy when JK was hurt early in that second half. And Marcus Crowley is a guy who I really believe. Ohio State took the red shirt off of him last year. They could have kept that on with Teague and Dobbins filling the backfield and taking a bunch of carries. They thought that he could help them down the stretch, and he got hurt against Maryland, and so he wasn't available for the biggest games on the schedule. Again, that's just speculating, but I think it might have looked different if Marcus Crowley, the way he was growing and developing, had maybe been able to help when JK was not at his full speed late in that Clemson game. So I think that just is underscoring how important I think he could be to the Buckeyes and how much faith really that coaching staff has in him.
Who is the freak on this 2020 Ohio State team? Because Chase Young, yeah, cool. We got it. We understand. We get it. Who's the freak this year?
Yeah, I think there's another one coming that we're going to be talking about, just like Chase Young in about a year's time. And Zach Harrison, the 5-star, he's from just outside Columbus here. Really, heated battle, one of the top players in the country. It came down to Ohio State and Michigan, and it, that's a key part in Ohio State keeping dominance in the rivalry. Really, is that they didn't lose that battle and lose that caliber of player. He actually started a couple games last year, which you think about that defensive line, that's saying a lot.
Yeah.
But he can, I forget exactly what his time was on the track, but this dude was just as good out running around against people who are, 7-8 inches shorter than him and definitely carrying 60 fewer pounds. He can move. He's strong as all get out. And when you have Larry Johnson working with that much raw talent, the sky's the limit. We're going to be – Chase Young is the best defensive end I think that I've covered, and I include both of the Bosas in that. But I think Zach Harrison can be right there in terms of production in the next couple of years. It also helps, though, that Jonathan Cooper is back at defensive end, and then Tyreke Smith is a guy who we've for those of us who've covered Ohio State, he was supposed to be the one to take the torch from Chase Young and be the next first-round pick, and he's been beset by injuries a lot both of the first 2 years on campus. Saw him report on that first day of voluntary workouts, and he looked like, hey, the shutdown did not impact his development at all. The guy looks like an absolute monster. So if he gets good injury luck, then this year we'll talk about Tyreke Smith as the freak, and then Zach Harrison will have a whole year to himself. But both of those guys are really, really special pass rushers.